You would think that the woman in the boxing fighting community would have had a more hard time. But no, everything was great and equal and embraced. And then when I talk to women who are in corporate America, where there's supposed to be this so-called equality and laws in place and safeguards in place, 100% of the women I talk to are like, no, it was bullshit and it sucked.
If you look at various definitions of resiliency, it's not about surviving or getting through. It's about thriving afterwards. It's energy management. It's we talked about sphere of influence. It's knowing what is your purpose at this point in time.
And welcome back, everyone, to this week's episode of Counterpunch Podcast. Life Hits Hard, We Hit Back Harder, based off of the #1 best-selling book, 6 Rounds to Resilience, by yours truly, Shalene Skinner. In my ring with me today is none other than public speaker, business owner, life coach, consultant, Miss Tanya Keats.
Hey.
Hey.
So happy to be here. I've been looking forward to this.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Yay, yay, yay. How are you doing? How's it going?
It's going well.
Yeah.
It's going well. It was a few weeks ago, I think it was a few weeks ago, had a speaking engagement and on resiliency, actually. And so it was super fun, and it made me think of you even more. So
yay. Yeah. So I'll tell our listeners a little bit, Tanya and I both kind of have some paralleled or aligned, what is the word? Stuff that we're into, we're good at. And she is also a wonderful public speaker. And you just did one on resiliency. How was that? Tell me about that.
It was great. Every time, it was in front of live people, which is always a bonus for me. I love the energy. I love getting that immediate response and reaction. Not that you can't get that off of online stuff. It's just a different energy. So it was a combination of online and live person. So that was a bonus. And one of the individuals, and I'm always comparing what can I do better and what can I learn from those who are attending. And one of the individuals was a retiree. And afterwards, it was a couple. And the gentleman said, I wish I had this when I was working. And I need to follow up with him. I didn't get a lot of contact information, and so I haven't been able to track him down, but I would love to get back a hold with him and find out, right? Tell me more about why you don't need as much resiliency as you've already transitioned. He said he needed the resiliency as he transitioned, but now that he doesn't have coworkers and projects and clients, and his world shrunk a bit, and he doesn't get triggered as much and doesn't have as much craziness going on in his life. He has a little bit more control over it. But I'd like to dive deeper into that, which I thought was a really interesting perspective.
It is interesting. And I would ask then why he signed up and attended. Right?
It may have been that his significant other really wanted to come, and he goes everywhere she goes, which is
I love it.
I think that mindset, which I think is also part of that resiliency, and that's you're always looking to better yourself. You're always looking to learn. You're always looking to be solution orientated. And if I could pick up one thing, that would have been a bonus. So those are guesses on my side.
Okay, I love that. Do you have anything else scheduled for the future for your speaking engagements and such?
Since the end of the year and the holiday time is coming, I don't have anything through the rest of the year. So
keep me posted.
How about yourself? How about your speaking engagements?
Okay, thank you for asking. Right now, currently, my book was picked up for a book club for the National Foundation called Hope Kids. And it's the book for the book club of the month. And so every Wednesday I host it. And we've got people on from all over the country, from Colorado to Arizona, Kansas City. And it's just surreal to have, these people on all over the country. And they're literally talking about my book and how it's helped their life. This is it's almost too much. My brain can't even accept it.
When does it start?
We did our second week last night. So we have 2 more weeks left.
Oh, and how did it go? How's it been going these last
Really
2 times?
well. And I kind of get what you were saying. You can still feel that energy, even though it's not in person. I wish it was, but yeah, I love feeling that energy. And I would love to do that in person, as you mentioned, and really get to soak in the energy. Would be amazing. Yeah, good for you. I love this. So walk us through, if you don't mind, kind of, I mean, we hear where you're at now. You're beautiful, you're successful, you're confident, check, check, check. You're helping others, obviously highly intelligent, but kind of walk us through, this Tanya before she was a coach, or what inspired you to get into this and do this?
Well, getting into coaching is a different story than the journey of resiliency. So I'll answer your first question. Okay. I did quite a bit of time in corporate America, and it wasn't dreadful. I learned a lot, and I wouldn't change it for anything, but and it was mostly in corporate America, it was process improvement, program management, that type of a thing. And my teams always said I did something differently. And when I hear something often enough, I always say, what's that all about? And they couldn't quite put their thumb on it. They just said, well, you don't harp on us about the numbers, because God only knows there's enough numbers, right? There's time and there's budget and all of the, I mean, there's all sorts of metrics. And I says, well, why would I do that? The numbers aren't the problem. You guys are the ones who are experts in your field. You guys know the solutions. Let's focus on solutions and not the problems. And it's all going to fix itself. The numbers are all going to work out. And so that's what I thought I did differently. And then a question I ask myself on a regular basis is, or I used to, is what do I want to do with my life, right? What is my purpose? And in the past, I always got crickets. I mean, absolutely nothing. So it's like, okay, let's just do the next thing, right? Let's just do the next thing. And this time when I asked, what is my purpose in life? I was so excited. It was, I love watching people shine.
Okay.
Right. And I'm jazzed. Right. I'm like, I got a crystal clear answer. Right. So I'm on cloud 9 for like 2 days. And then I thought, what the hell do I do with that? It's not like I want to be a teacher. I want to be an astronaut. What the hell
really broad. That's a really broad answer.
So then it was like buzzkill, complete buzzkill. And I'm like, what am I going to do? So I'm frustrated. And I'm mentioning this to a friend. And they're like, well, Tanya, that's coaching. I'm like, huh? Right? I mean, not that I live completely under a rock, but they gave me some recommendations, and I went and did my research, and I thought, oh my goodness, this is why my team said I do something differently. I didn't manage my teams. I coached my teams.
There it is.
And so ended up on going through the training and certification and all of that stuff, and haven't looked back.
I love that. So you did know what you wanted to do. You knew what you wanted to do. That's great. That's great. I love that. Great. And if any of our listeners or anybody is interested in getting a hold of you for coaching, do you have a website or something we can gear them to?
KeatsCoaching.com.
Okay, go and spell Keats for us, for our listeners.
It's like the poet, KEATS, KeatsCoaching.com.
Great. I hope some people reach out to you. I actually, how I was, connected with you is through one of your clients who has ranted and raved about you and been like, oh, Shalene, you need to connect with Tanya, and so obviously great, because you came as a referral. So you must do good work. You must do good work. Well, good. I love that. And then so coaching has kind of branched out sometimes into some speaking events as well then.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's great.
It morphed into that. People wanted to hear information, or clients would say, I think this particular topic would be a great thing to talk about at not, I want to say social clubs, but events at clubs and things that they're in, or at their work or whatever. And right, we're always looking for speakers, and we're looking for speakers who aren't just rah, rah, rah. But we're also looking for someone who's willing to give us actual information that we can go out and implement. And I must say, that is one of the things I loved about your book is, I mean, check this out. It's manageable to read. It's in clear English and in words that you can understand and completely relate to. And it's actionable. I'm telling you.
Well, thank you so much.
I read it in one sitting and I was like, okay, I accomplished something and now I can do something with this. So
there it is. I love that. I purposefully, you know, was like, we're not putting any of the jargon in. We're, you know, there's so many books and you've got to like look back at like, you know, what does that mean? You know, and I thank you. That's a good, I'm glad you noticed that. I'm glad that it was helpful in attaining that information. It is actionable. I think that's, yeah, being actionable is, what good is the information otherwise? Not much.
Some people like collecting it, you know, like people who knit, there's getting the yarn and sewing, there's getting the fabric is one hobby, and then there's creating something. I think there's a tendency of accumulating information, but not using it. I think they're two different skills and hobbies that people have.
I'm with you. I'm on the actionable side, like cut through the gray area, get me from A to B.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, great. Yay. Thank you for the shout out too. That's awesome. Okay, so now we'll dive a little deeper then. We'll back it up even further in your life and talk to me a little bit about resiliency and when you've had to, you know, you preach on it, you coach on it, you speak on it. That means you're an expert in the field. How did you be, you know, tell me some of your experiences that led you to having to be resilient.
Those are all great things, but as you may know from the client that we both know, I don't just talk it, I live it. My integrity is just that way. And so it started off, I grew up in an environment where women and children were considered second-class citizens. And it wasn't like a cult and it wasn't like a religious thing. It was just the dynamics of the area that I lived in. And then even deeper into the family dynamics that I grew up in. And so my mom and my grandma were two amazing people who helped guide me through on what it's like to have the desire to grow in an environment that prevents you to do so. And the subtleties and the acceptabilities of how to do that, I didn't necessarily appreciate it and realize it as a kid, but as I grew up, I was like, those were phenomenal women. I mean, my grandma, she was married a year before anybody knew she was married, because if she was married, she would have lost her benefits at work and she would have been fired. So she said, I know the rules, I'll play the game. So she got married, stayed working so she could meet some financial goals. And then when she met her goals, she told everybody she was married and they had a wedding.
Smart woman. Yeah.
Right. And yeah. Right. And that was what? I don't know how long ago grandma's passed away, but it's been decades ago. So, right. She was, yeah. My mom was the same way. She jumped in from the pot to the frying pan as far as messed up dynamics and relationships. And yet she was able to grow and show me how to do that, not overstep any boundaries and stay safe. And what you can do once you get out of an environment that's pushing you down. Although, right, went from family dynamics to work environments, right, with some pretty toxic bosses and managers, right? Did, like I mentioned, corporate America, not necessarily the softest glove you've ever had.
Well, I just haven't ever really heard a lot of good stuff about corporate America from women. I just haven't. But that's not to put it all in a big, but I just personally just haven't heard a lot of great stuff from women.
I learned a lot. Like I said, it wasn't dreadful. I learned a lot, but most of what I learned was what not to do, which I didn't take as a victim. I took as how would I do this differently? And there was this one particular manager. Wow, what a piece of work. What a piece of work. And it forced me to go to places and to get to know me so much better. And without his horribleness, I don't think I would have ever have gone to that point. And so once again, a blessing in disguise of thank you very much, Mr. Idiot.
Right. Right. Because it propelled you into places, or, you know, to do what you needed to do, grow, whatever, learn. Yeah. Yeah. That otherwise you may not have done.
Agree. And being super accountable, it was like, this, what am I doing wrong? Right. It's a common phrase I hear from women. What am I doing wrong? What's my part in this? What's my accountability? And that was the biggest lesson, is that sometimes it's not me. Sometimes it really is you.
That's true. Really That's true. That's true. Yep. Okay. So we had some corporate America. We had some family and environment dynamics that you kind of had to get some great, feminine energy in your family, though, some good role models.
Yeah. Yep. The funny thing is I go back and look at my relationships, because resiliency isn't just in one area of life. It's a skill that can be used through all areas of your life. And what I find super interesting is looking at first responders, right? They're fantastic at resiliency. We're talking about fire, police, military, EMTs, right? Emergency room. We're talking about all of those. And they're fantastic at the resiliency when it comes to their job. It makes them great at what they do, but they often don't use those skills in their personal life. They leave them at work, and then they don't bring it into their personal life. And the great news is as you had mentioned, we had a brief conversation. He said, what's that resiliency journey? It helped me unpackage and look at what does that look like in my past. And I was super surprised to see that only like 2 of my past relationships were nightmares and disasters, and they should have never have happened. And one of them I knew and just didn't get out fast enough. And the other one, right, it was a learning opportunity. But the other relationships, they just weren't a good match. And so as a whole, I was really surprised I brought it more into maybe my personal life and maybe not as much into my professional life, because I thought there was rules in your professional life that protected you from some of the abuse and stuff. And I think that was a different awakening in my younger years.
That's interesting. Yeah. So yeah, I'm thinking about all this. I'm like, okay, yeah. So maybe you felt like there were like the rules or the safeguards in place. So I don't need to be so resilient in the workforce. But then as you got in and got going, like, holy cow, I do need to be resilient here.
I mean, you're in I would say a male dominated industry.
Yeah.
Have you noticed?
Boxing gyms for a decade. I mean, I'd be the only female boxing. You don't know a lot of female boxing gym owners. Where USA Boxing certified, putting out like legitimate fighters, Golden Gloves champions and whatnot. I was in a 99.999% male dominated field. However, it was not corporate, so I've never had to deal with that. Probably wouldn't last 10 seconds because I'd probably just honestly go fucking ape shit in there. It would be bad. But yeah, it's interesting to me too. And we even kind of get into that a little bit and compare it. You would think that the woman in the boxing fighting community would have had a more hard time, but no, everything was great and equal and embraced. And then when I talk to women who are in corporate America, where there's supposed to be this so-called equality and laws in place and safeguards in place, 100% of the women I talked to are like, no, it was bullshit. It sucked. and it was hard and it was difficult, and I had to fight and claw and work, and sometimes work twice as hard and get paid less. And the irony is, the more manly, masculine, rugged, career you would think of would be the fighters.
Yeah.
But it's not like, that's not. And so there's the irony in that, which I think is interesting, and we should take note of. Whatever. There's a big old stereotype that we can get rid of. Like, that's great. I had no problems. Everybody treated me with respect and equality, and treated my fighters. Didn't treat them any different, because their gym they came from was a woman coach, and I just I always think it's really interesting. Yeah, it was some good points here.
I appreciate the insights. I was thinking that you may have had similar stories, but wrong.
No, and maybe they're like, if this woman has gyms, we're not even going to mess with her. Maybe I was like, hey, we're not going to mess with her. She's got these fighters behind her who love her and support her. We are not going to mess with her. So maybe that's what you need to do. Go in with some fighters behind you when you get hired, and here it is.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you mentioned that, because it just reminded me. I have an older brother, and Mom said when we'd get into disputes as we were younger, she had these boxing gloves, and she would lock us in a room, and she said, I see blood, you're both in trouble, but you two need to figure this out between yourselves. I am not your mediator. And so she'd stick us in a room. So what that meant is that I got really good at dodging and running and being fast, and he got really good at hitting me where I went bleed. Once again, coping skills and resiliency, just in a whole different fashion.
Yeah, I got locked with my brother for us to box it out. I think this is what we were working towards this whole conversation. There it is. We don't recommend this. This isn't in our protocol of coaching. Don't beat it out of each other. I love it. That's definitely where resiliency definitely could have stemmed from. You had to make it out of that room. Live to tell another day and be friends with your brother.
There you go.
No, but that's true. That's a great example. I love that you did. That's actually pretty funny. Like, there's where, yeah. Good for you. Good. I love this. So I kind of got a gist of it through your story, but something we ask every guest, which I kind of heard a little bit of it, but I want to ask, like, because we always talk about like resiliency and some life story stuff and background stuff and whatever. Who would you say is like your, not your idol per se, inspiration? Who's your inspiration?
Definitely my mom.
Yeah.
Definitely my mom. And it's interesting. She's been gone now for over 10 years. And friends of mine who have known her and friends of hers I still stay in contact with, the lessons on how she lived her life, right? She didn't go around preaching and teaching. She just lived her life and was actively engaged in life. And they're like, oh my gosh, the sayings and things that your mom would say and how she lived have just resonated. And I still hear two of the things that she used to say all the time. And it was like, breathe, breathe. And the second thing is, this too shall pass. And she said that also applies to the really good things. So enjoy them while they last. But everything is a temporary situation as long as you're taking action on it, because time itself won't heal things.
I love that. Those are two, couldn't be any more accurate. And it can be very grounding, both of those can be very grounding, especially in a time of turmoil when you do need resilience. It might be hard to find those two, to breathe, sounds simple, but it's wonderful. And it can instantly ground you. And then this too shall pass, I think is, sometimes that's hard, right? When you're deep in it and you're going through something and you feel like it never will pass. It just like, oh my God. And so to remember that and to say it and to believe it, I think is very critical, especially when we're dealing with maybe depression or health diagnosis or things that can be very drawn out, longer than like, oh, I'm late for work today. Like major life events, they will pass. And you're correct correct. And then I also think exactly what your mother said, in the beautiful and fleeting moments, we still need to be aware that this will pass. And I think that makes it more beautiful. And we try to pay more attention to it and cherish it because we know it will. So
Yeah.
wonderful, wonderful coming from your mom. I love both of those and how those could relate to us no matter what in life. Yay. Well, those are great. Those are great. And so you try to carry that in, and those ideas to your clients and when you coach and in your own life. And
well, as we were talking just before we got on, the interesting thing about resiliency is it is a positive attribute, right? It's a positive attribute to have. Most people would say resiliency is a good attribute, but if you look at various definitions of resiliency, it's not about surviving or getting through. It's about thriving afterwards. It's about growing. It's about making choices. It's about, right, thriving. It's a positive thing. It's not about enduring. It's amazing coming through to the other side. And those who have lived a charmed life have never had the opportunity to exhibit and practice resiliency. It's a skill. It can be learned. And the sad thing is, it's one of those skills you can actively learn, but it's passively passed on to your friends and to your family and to your kids, right? It's not like, this is how you do this when this happens. It's a matter of watching and listening and seeing. It's that culture of the family, of the friends you hang around with, that sphere of influence, the culture of that company. It's absorbed. And I think that's where the danger in negative coping strategies, right? The drinking, the avoidance, the excessiveness, the disengaging, the not communicating, right? All of those negative coping strategies are assumed in very much the same way. And those aren't going to get you one step closer to being resilient.
Yeah, I agree. I'm jotting some of these notes down as you're speaking. So yeah, that's really important because I've heard that throughout this whole, podcast with you, is it keeps circling back to your home environment, your mom and your grandma. And so I'm not surprised, this environment that you grew up with, and these are the women in your life that you're now doing what you do. They, it's not that just Tanya herself knows these skills, what you just said, these have been embedded in you since you were born. And as exactly these tribute to what you just said, the culture of your family, your sphere of influence, this isn't, you just happen to be good at this. Nobody just happens to be good at, resiliency, as you said, it's a skill. And this is one that you've obviously been practicing for, a while. And then the flip side of that, which was really great, is that, at the same time, these bad coping mechanisms can be picked up. And so my question is then, especially for our listeners, so we have a lot of listeners, and we focus on, a lot of our guests have come from really bad situations. They've been, incarcerated. They've been in prison for years. They've been, addicts, selling drugs, and then they come in and they've created something, amazing and beautiful with their life, and they come out on the other side. Now, not all of our listeners have maybe come out on the other side yet, right? So for our listeners who do not have that culture of family, that support circle, what would your recommendation be to try, to learn this skill when your environment is not supporting it?
As I mentioned, you had mentioned, what is your resiliency journey? And it was a great question I never personally thought of. And as I was doing that, I was writing down some of the tool inventory that's in the truck in the garage. It's gone past the toolbox. It's now a truck. And right, some of the things are knowing what positive coping strategies are, and knowing what the negative coping strategies are, and just replace negative ones with positive ones. Like, I'm not going to wallow in the problem, right, and go drama all up on the problem. I'm going to be solution orientated, right? I'm not going to disengage or isolate myself, I am going to reach out for help, or I'm not going to stay silent and suffer. I'm going to choose to communicate. And all of these may be new tools or may be used in a different way than you're used to. And anytime you try something new, right? A new exercise, a new move, right? It's weird. You feel like a dork. You're super awkward. You feel mechanical. You know, you're just like, I'm Elaine dancing on Seinfeld, right? This cannot be done in public. So one is knowing those coping strategies. It's recognizing when you've been triggered, right? Part of resiliency is knowing when you've been triggered and understanding what are some of those physical things that this fantastic body of ours is physically telling you. Things like I get headaches, I get a pit in my stomach, right? There's so many physical, or you've just got that spidey sense that something's off. Listen to the whispers. They're telling you something that as we get older, we shut those off. Kids are fantastic at this, at listening to those whispers, and we get it beaten out of us like crazy. It's asking for assistance and knowing what that looks like. And my recommendation is friends and family aren't a place to ask for assistance. They're a place to get support. Go to the professionals, go to your clergy, go to your shrinks, go to your coach. I went to a consultant because they usually tell you what to do. And I don't know a 2-year-old to a 92-year-old who likes being told what to do. So I'd stay away from consultants. There's creating successes. And that's what we've talked about. Do something, even though it's awkward, and say, you know what? That didn't work so well. So let me go touch base with somebody who I know has done this. And I've seen it. And that could be a book you read and you loved a character and the resiliency that they had. What strategies did they use in that book that you could emulate? What movies are you watching that's showing about resilient people? What did they do? Now, are those your best sources? No, but it's something.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
It's having a conversation.
No, I agree. And sometimes those are more attainable.
Exactly.
Quickly and easily attainable.
It is. It's energy management. It's, we talked about sphere of influence. It's knowing what is your purpose at this point in time. It's what are your values? And that may sound
term, Tanya. Energy management. I like that term.
Energy management. There's
like,
only so much of
it. That. So how many times are there instances where you're, and if you're not really self-aware or intuitive or whatever, your body can elicit a lot of responses to situations that you're like, I don't even know what just happened. Energy management. I love it. Yeah. And if it's watching a motivational movie and you feel better after, and you feel like you learned and were inspired, there it is.
Absolutely. My analogy with energy management is, think of Britain and the Queen, and you're having high tea, and there's always a teacup and a saucer. Give only what's in the saucer. Don't give what's in the cup, because once you dip into that cup, you're depleting what you don't have to give.
Oh.
What's in the cup is what you get.
Okay. That's a tough one.
It's a visual. It's a visual.
I love it. Well, this is great stuff. Yeah, no, this is great advice, great stuff. So basically what you've just done is you've made it attainable to anybody and everybody, no matter where you're at. Like, hey, let's redirect some of the stuff that we're doing. Let's use whatever we can, and giving us the heads up. Hey, like with anything new, it's going to feel really weird and awkward and uncomfortable. Keep at it.
I remember the difficult conversation, the 4-step difficult conversation. I felt like a robot. And I practiced it with a really close sphere of friends. And I told them what I was doing, right? I'm practicing something. So if I sound like an idiot, please play along. And they're like, we completely get where this is coming. And now I don't have to go through step 1, step 2, step 3, and going through some of this script. And people are like, you just have conversations that I don't know many people have. And it's just like no different than what do you want to have for dinner? And I'm like, that's called practice.
That's practice. Yes, I love that. So we can practice our resiliency tools and it'll just the same difference. Well, I love this, Tanya. This has been really, really fantastic. Just kind of getting to know you more and really kind of following, where this path has come and where it's headed. And I love this. I know that you brought a whole lot of great information to all of our listeners and viewers today. And also, I was going to let everybody know. You can do the telehealth or the virtual coaching as well, right? They don't have to be in your area. Yeah. So you're accessible to anyone and everyone.
I've had over the pond. Yeah. I've got a question for you. One thing that I loved and that you brought new awareness to in your book, and that was, I don't know if I'm phrasing it right, but that was faith.
Mm-hmm.
Am I phrasing it right? The last one. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh my goodness, that is one based upon my client. I don't go into as freely, based upon what their preferences are, but completely nailed it. That was like a completely new one. I'm like, oh my gosh, she just brought that right up front. It was phenomenal. So thank you.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I tell you what, Tanya, since we're talking, our listeners are just gonna have to listen, but I sat on that chapter in my head, and I knew it needed to be in the book. I knew it needed to be in the book. I lived it, like you had said, and I knew it was freaking the effing pillar. It had to be there, but I also knew I didn't want to scare away, as you said, people of different denominations or beliefs and atheists and whatnot. So I'd be very careful in making sure that it was based upon faith, not any type of religion, not any certain entity. I do not remotely mention anything, but I'm so glad that you said that. Thank you for that compliment, because I worked really hard on that chapter to emphasize the importance of faith, but take out, I don't care what you believe in. And that's not the point of it. It's not to preach to you believe, but it's that you have to have something, because some things in life it's just excruciating and gut-wrenching. And these other 5 rounds aren't going to hold a candle to some things that happen to us. And to not crumble, to not become a statistic, and I'm talking real shit right now, you have to fall back on faith. So thank you for that.
Yes.
Thank you so much for acknowledging that. And it makes me feel really good, because I kind of felt like I had to tiptoe and be very careful, but while emphasizing the importance of it. I don't give a shit what your faith is in, but you got to have it.
You didn't go into religion, you went into faith. And I see those very different.
Yeah. And what is your faith in? I was very clear in that. So thank you so much, because I knew, it's so tricky, and I didn't want people to be like, oh, faith, no, just hear me out. Hear me out. I love everybody, and everybody's welcome and accepted, everybody of all kinds. And so thank you so much thank you. Really, that was a tough one. Like I said, sitting here, like in my notebook, and how do we address this while stressing the importance of it? So I love that you said I nailed it. That makes me feel fantastic. That's great.
Yay. It made me think, one, I get to have via video or in person with clients to be able to read them, but you aren't able to read your audience, and it's a broad audience.
Yeah.
And it almost, I'm like, I'm such a coward, right? Some of that negative self-talk was going in. You're such a coward. Why don't you just come out and do it? And I'm like, okay, right? She gave you a great example on how to do it, Tanya.
There you go. Now introduce it with your clients.
You're my sphere of influence on how to do better.
I love it. I'll be the first one. I'm not scared. I'll throw it out there, whatever. So far, I've got on great reviews. Knock on wood. I don't want to jinx it. As soon as I say that, I'll be like, Tanya, somebody got mad about my. No. It'll be great. It'll be great. Well, you are fantastic, and thank you for that. I do appreciate that, because like you just said, it's harder for me to get that feedback. I definitely can't see or feel your instant feedback as you're reading it. So you just kind of throw it out there to the wind and keep your fingers crossed and see what happens. So
well done.
I love it. Well, you are an absolute joy. I look forward to chatting with you again in the future. Maybe there'll be some collab work in the future. Who knows?
That'd be great.
thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for involving me on the work that you're doing. Right. Would love to let me know what else I can do to support what you're doing, because I'm a believer.
Oh, thank you so much, Tanya. We will see you soon.
Will do. Bye.